follow through. And I guess without further ado, we will start because time is allocated and energy is allocated today for this webinar. Good afternoon, ladies and not afternoon, good evening, I guess, ladies and gentlemen. And today we have gathered for this webinar on newly appointed managers. What are the struggles? And, today I was reading one article in Forbes, and actually the Workforce Institute study just recently that has been done, it says that nearly around 70 people who have the managers actually are having more impact when the manager helps them with the mental health, when they are empathetic, when they can help them as well to solve their problems. And if I would be at the audience right now, I would be asking you, how many of you have been a people manager who had the team and needed to manage the people? So now we are virtually, and you can, raise your hand by that or put the plus. But still, this topic is crucial, and it raises more and more as the studies, and again, recent studies shows that having the environment for the people who just came up from specialist to the manager is important. Today, Vilnius Business College, as an organizer, powered by Nova School of Business and Economics Executive Education, we gathered our heads and made a program called iHEAD for newly appointed managers to accelerate the journey into the management field. While you are here, who are joining, I would be very, very curious before I invite the first speaker to put in the comments, which industry are you from? Is it HR? Is it technology? Is it IT? Is it manufacturing? Maybe it's education. So just for us to know what kind of people today is gathered for this talk. And today we are gathering two people from the program's faculty, one representing Nova School of Business Economics Executive Education, Miguel Cunha, and Gerda Asipavičienė, professional certified coach, who will share from their perspective and what they will be covering in this program. So the questions, I will invite you to ask the questions at the end of the talks, as they have allocated some time for this talk. So for you to hear what are their views, maybe the crippling question you are having, and also as the iHEAD program will be going on, also because you came purposely right here, not only because of the topic, but also what it can lead to next. So without further ado, let me introduce Professor of Leadership, President of the Scientific Council, and board member of the Leadership Knowledge Center of Nova School of Business and Economics Executive Education from Portugal, the one who has written the latest book on positive organizational behavior, and that is published, Miguel Cunha. So Miguel, please welcome on floor, and please continue.
Okay, thank you very much, Loretta. And also good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where we are. For us here, it's still sunny. We are in Lisbon. And thanks for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here. I have more or less 15 minutes, which I will try to use efficiently. And let me just start that the plan for my session is the following. I will first of all, very briefly present my main conceptual passions. I have a couple of topics that are at the center of my personal interest as a researcher, and then I will discuss, as Loretta said, how can we accelerate the journey as new managers, and also how can we understand some of the growing pains involved in the journey, because the journey is interesting, is challenging, but there are also some obstacles that need to be understood so that they can be overcome. So that's the plan. And for this, I will invite you to think about some of the steps in the process of personal development. Probably you have already felt some of the pains, and this will be the center of my presentation. So from my side, just on top of what Loretta said, I'm a professor at Nova School of Business and Economics. I'm doing research mostly on two topics, which is organizational paradox theory, the theory of organizations as rife or rich in tension. Sometimes the notion of paradox is perceived as something which is weird and needs to be removed. But according to this theory, the organizations are complex, and leadership or leading organization is complex because of the complexity and plurality of organizations. And this is one of the topics that I will try to share at some point. My other intellectual passion is organization as process, meaning that organizations are constantly changing and shifting because that's the nature of the world. We tend to see the world as made of fixed entities, but I will invite you to think about organizations and the processes that happen within them, namely leadership, as processes that are constantly flowing. So that's the plan. And in terms of the presentation, I will, as I noted, discuss the main competencies that are activated as we progress in our careers, and to some of the tensions or paradoxes, if you want, that happen at the intersection between different phases, and that potentially introduce some pain, if you want. But as they say in English, no pain, no gain. So it's better to be ready for engaging with these growing pains. So let me start by inviting you to think about an imaginary triangle. And this triangle will be used for us to understand the way organizations evolve, or we evolve as leaders in organizations, and what are the main competencies involved. These competencies will be very broad, and of course they can be subdivided in different sub-competencies. But I think that for the purpose of our discussion, they will be clear enough. So. When we start our professional journeys, so in the very beginning of our careers, I think that the competence that matters the most is what is sometimes called technical competence, meaning the capacity to get things done. In other words, what matters in the beginning is to be able to do the job. And in this sense, for example, if I'm a doctor in a given area of expertise, if I'm a teacher of mathematics, if I'm a manager in logistics, whatever, I need to be able to get the job done. And of course, this is challenging enough, but at this stage, we are individual contributors. In other words, my contribution is individual. I get my work done, and that's it. It can be, of course, as I mentioned, challenging, sometimes even overwhelming, but this is just the beginning of the leadership journey. Because after a few years, well, it depends, of course, on each of our trajectories, but after, say, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, it depends, people will be confronted with the second challenge, or the need to develop or to express a new group of competencies. So the idea is that if I proved my competence as an individual contributor, I will at some point be maybe invited by my organization to assume a new type of work. And this work will be fundamentally different from the work I was doing before. For the majority of us, this will consist in managing a team. And managing a team, as we all know, makes the world totally different from the initial technical contribution. In other words, I will have to get my work done through other people, which means that to a great extent, my work now consists in managing people. Of course, I still have my work to do, and this has not disappeared or vanished, but a great part of the work and some of the challenges are no more associated with running the team rather than with doing my job. As we all know, for some people, this is something that is more or less natural. In other words, for what is sometimes called people persons, dealing with people is okay, sometimes even enjoyable, and I may grow with a job. But for other people, this is more challenging and problematic, which means that for some people, this second stage can be quite difficult to handle, because on top of the technical competencies that were relevant before, now we need to express what is sometimes called social competencies, interpersonal competencies, or sometimes there's a label for this, which is called soft skills. I think that soft skills is a misleading name because this is not soft at all, but you get the point. So in other words, at this stage, it will be important for people to express new competencies, such as, for example, the capacity to listen to people, the capacity to communicate in a way that will clarify expectations, giving and receiving feedback, keeping the team resilient, etc. So all these are part of this constellation of factors known as the social skills. In other words, now the challenge consists in turning a group of people into a real team with all the attributes of a real team. So sometimes we tend to think about teams as just, we put people together and we'll have a team. The idea here is that this is more complicated, and we can create teams or not to the extent that we nurture the team spirit and create something different than the group of individuals that I work with. Some people, as I mentioned, know how to transition well. In other cases, it's more complicated. It is sometimes said that organizations, sometimes they lose bad professionals to gain bad leaders. Of course, at the end, nobody gains anything, but you see the point. So the idea is that technical competencies are at this stage not enough. So we need the soft skills. And some people, as I pointed out, develop this capacity to lead their teams. And because they do so successfully for a significant period of time, it's possible that at some point in the future, they will be invited to assume positions of higher responsibility. For example, running a team of teams or a group of teams, a department, even the organization as a whole, which means that at this stage, at a later stage in our careers, we will be invited to assume more strategic positions. And with these strategic positions, a number of other attributes become necessary, or a new type of competence that can be called maybe strategic competencies, which are fundamentally different from the two groups of competencies that I have alluded to. These are no longer just technical competencies. They are not only social skills. They involve the capacity to understand not only details, like, for example, the small things that need to be managed on an ongoing basis. In our organizations, we all handle a number of small problems, but even though they are small, they are, of course, very important. But on the other hand, we need to pay attention to the, for example, mega trends, new technological developments, new competitor moves, etc. And for this reason, these strategic competencies can maybe be described as the capacity to allow leaders not only to see the trees, but also the forest. And I think that when it comes to leaders at the top level, this is probably the most relevant competence. How can I, as a leader, manage to articulate the very micro with the very macro? And how can I understand that both the micro and the macro are equally relevant for me to get my job done? So these three competencies, in a sense, with technical competencies at the base and social and strategic competencies at the sides. These are three of the building blocks of leader competence that manifest over time. At the center, we have a fourth competence that is sometimes called self-leadership. Some people dislike the idea of self-leadership. The idea is that the leadership is about leading others. I personally think it's an important point, because the first person or the first individual we have to lead others is ourselves. So to what extent am I working or behaving appropriately as a leader? To what extent do I understand my motives? To what extent can I control myself? To what extent am I open to the feedback of others? As we all know, some of the major leadership derailments happen precisely because at some point I start listening to other people, I start interrogating myself, and at the end I can become a victim of the process called hubris, which I will write in the chat for the case you have not heard about. This is not the most popular word in the world, but the idea is that hubris refers to the arrogance of the powerful, and the more powerful we get, the more we are potentially tempted by hubris, which means that this notion of self-leadership is very, very important. So this story lets us defines the one of the most relevant difficulties of leadership, the idea that over time we need to acquire different competencies. The problem to aggravate this need to acquire different competencies, and I'm aware that I have just 3 minutes left, is that there are some paradoxes or tensions in the transition between levels. So first of all, when we transition from technical to social competencies, there's a so-called Peter principle. At sometimes we are promoted on the basis of a previous competence just to becoming competent at the next level. So the becoming a leader comes with a totally new set of transitions or a totally new set of challenges that need to be articulated. And for some people, this is really hard to handle because the soft skills are very, very hard to develop. As we move up to the top, people will be tempted by the so-called power paradox, or the paradox of power, as a researcher from the University of California, Dasher Keltner, calls it. Keltner says that people are promoted because they care about others, and once in positions of power, they forget about others. And you see the temptation here is how can I, or the challenge is how can I control myself in such a way that I don't feel tempted by this idea that now I don't have to listen to others, because at the end, this will not even be leadership, it will be command or control. And finally, as people move to the top level, to the C-suite, the idea is that we need to develop a new competence, and there will be another tension involved. So as we need to zoom in and zoom out to see the forest and the trees, as I mentioned before, this new challenge is potentially paradoxical in the sense that these two movements, zooming in and zooming out, to use the photographic metaphor, are fundamentally antithetical. And you can see the conclusion, and I will finish with this. Some people are more comfortable with zooming in, so looking at details, knowing the everything in the organization. And of course, this will be problematic because this is the process we normally call micromanagement. So I need to know everything, which means that at the end, nothing is done without my permission. And of course, the organization will not function because no organization can function under this regime. On the other hand, some other people feel that they, their time is too precious to be wasted with the small things, and they keep on strategizing, as it might be called. So they live in the organizational stratosphere. They know nothing about a real organization, but they feel happy because they are important and they are doing strategy, and the rest of the mortals will be doing the rest of work. As you can imagine, the problem is that these two movements, micro management, or the other call it macro leadership, are potentially very, very problematic. Because in the first case, we'll have leaders that don't really know what's going on in the organization, whereas in the second, we'll have leaders that do not allow the organization to function freely, which means that, and to conclude, that leadership is difficult because, as I pointed out, it's a process. It keeps confronting us with the need to gain new competencies, new knowledge over time. And second, at the time we move from one level to the next, so there will be a transition that is potentially difficult because it will involve one of these paradoxical tensions. So if you are moving to leadership positions, beware, because the even if you don't like paradoxes, paradoxes will like you a lot. So that's the end of my presentation. I think now I'll leave the floor to Gerda, and at the end we'll have time to answer your questions. Loretta, is that correct?
Thank you, Miguel, for this brief introduction on paradox and leadership, where the pain is growing, or maybe not growing, but exists, and we have a remedy on that. And actually, the remedy is when people are connected and when people are resourceful, when they have the right resources in their hands. And today there are a lot of resources. So to find the right resource, it's challenging. So that's why we need to have a set of different tools to help, first of all, as a self-leadership, as Miguel was mentioning, and as well to help a team where perhaps you are a leader or even a manager. Sometimes I put them kind of equal. Sometimes you are a manager, sometimes you are a leader in the same shoes. And then finally, also to help your organization that gives you an extra power to lead the change. Actually, I have not introduced myself. I am Loretta Pivorūnaitė, and I am the manager of this program called iHEAD that we help, newly designed. We help to accelerate newly appointed managers into their management positions or in their management role. And the next speaker is the professionally certified coach, EPC, for individual and team coaching at the International Coaching Federation, and as well at the Ericsson Coaching International College from Canada. Coming with experience of more than 50 years managing a couple of interesting industries, and due to that leading and coaching leaders for more than 6 years. And while before Gerda will start, I would like also some of you who have joined to name your industry, where you are coming from, so we can also can see, can understand what the nature of industry fields are present today at this webinar. So we have IT, we have insurance, we have crypto, with some education, maybe financial, HR. Please be brave and connect to us. So without further ado, without this postponement, Gerda Asipavičienė on those 3 pinpoints on learning how to step up into the newly appointed managers. What are those learnings? Gerda, the floor is yours.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Miguel, for this paradoxical view to leadership. And I'm Gerda Asipavičienė, a leadership and team coach. I have been working with managers, groups, and teams of different organizations for the last 6 years, and I have my own experience of being manager, being newly appointed manager and the CEO for more than 15 years. I feel really excited about having this great possibility tonight to talk about the struggles of the newly appointed managers and having my head in iHEAD program. I remember my experience as a newly appointed manager, as well as the experience of CEO, who wishes to impact a smooth acceleration of newly appointed managers. I will invite you tonight to explore some personal experience, some important tips of the learning process, and I will offer you a tool to evaluate your leadership skills, as well as it could be used while you communicate with your staff. However, please let me start by sharing with you one situation from my personal experience. 5 managers, including myself, were participating in one of our strategic meetings. We had a decision that we need more financial data and from our head of finance, and we would be able to make our decision based on these data. Next morning, I went to the office of our head of finance to check how the things were going on. I was energized and impatiently looking for our meeting and the possibilities that this solution could bring us. The head of finance looked at me and asked me if she could tell me the truth. I said, of course, because it was quite usual practice in our daily communication. She told me that it was nonsense what she was preparing. She said she would need more time to prepare real valuable data for our decision. Without any doubt, I was surprised and asked her why she hadn't told me this the day before. I'm not able to think as quickly as all of you do. I need more time to make the decision. It was her answer. And, so simple reason, but it became one of the most important moments of my career. We postponed our meeting for half a day. We made a rule from then on that we meet for sharing information or questions or give each other time to come back with ideas. And this is one of lot of situations that made me look for the practical tools how to work with people to reach highest results as I really wish to become an efficient manager. I was sure that it should be more effective ways to communicate with people, avoid mistake, waste time, and make more efficient decisions to reach higher results. I started my organizational development and later coaching trainings. I found coaching methods as one of the most efficient ways to accelerate thinking, increase awareness, develop required skills, and adapt new ways of thinking. I got deeper into complexity of decision making, the importance of clear communication, and ability to listen others. Just a small example for you. I don't know how to do it. I'm sure that you would agree that it is the phrase that we use and hear quite often. Have you noticed that it could be few meanings of it? I do not know any options how to do it, or I do not know how to choose between the different options, or maybe I don't understand the criteria for the best solution. The required help with I don't know case would be totally different when we understand the essence, right? However, the most important lessons that I have learned was how important is to increase a proper space for people to do their work as well as they can. Would you agree that this is one of the most important tasks of the manager or leader of any team? To create a space where people could work at their best. Sometimes it could sound easy to say, but complicated to fulfill. So I'll invite you to explore a little bit. And could we make a small pause there for you to remember your first job achievements when you reach better results when you hoped? When somebody noticed and evaluated you in the organization or team? You felt maybe confident in the sphere of your activity. Could you remember this moment? And the moment of your promotion came. Do you remember that day? How would you describe that day? Joy, confidence, knowing your value? Maybe the feeling I was worth it. Or maybe the feeling of winner. If you signed up for the role of manager, more or less, but you were sure that you know the role of manager and you could go for it. Your first days and first month in your role. How long did it take for you to meet the reality? To understand the real challenge you have signed up for, to feel decrease of your energy, to feel the increased wish to prove that your promotion was the right choice? Maybe uncertainty, fear, imposter syndrome, a wide range of challenges and strugglings dealing with all of this. Do you recognize a bunch of feelings and weight of responsibility? And do you still remember we talked about the previous joy and winner's feeling? That the situation is totally different. And it's interesting. Why did it happen? It is our first step from unconscious incompetency to the sphere of conscious incompetence, like observing others driving and trying to drive ourselves. It's totally different when we try. As a newly appointed manager, I already know what I don't know and how much I don't know and how much I didn't evaluate it signing up for this role. Really, I did not have any clue how much I need to learn. It is an important task to help the newly appointed managers to go smoothly to the conscious competence, where we understand why and what we must do, and even know how to do it. The guidance and on how to learn efficiently is the most important in this step. And it's interesting that researchers confirms that more than 25% of newly appointed managers need more than 6 months to reach effectiveness if they worked early in the organization. If the managers were appointed to the role from the outside of organization, all of them needed more than 3 months, and even 62% of newly appointed managers from outside of organization needed more than 6 months to reach their effectiveness. The way is long enough, isn't it? Adding speed is not as easy as stepping on accelerator. The points that we need to pay attention to include a clear strategy and vision, faster decision-making mechanism, improvements on internal communication and collaboration, increasing the use of technologies, and etc., etc. Besides all these mentioned important criteria reported by managers, I'd like to mention 2 criteria to start with. The learning and the way from conscious incompetency to conscious competency is not the easiest one. I need to recognize and admit my lack of knowledge and mistakes. Psychological safety is essential to growth and open communication. And this is about respect, trust, and confidence, support, challenge, and encouragement. And if we have a safe environment to grow, it's time to discuss the most efficient ways of growth. Usually, we are likely to teach others in a way it works for us. Our best advice is based on our experience. I have no doubt that it worked for somebody. And I have no doubt that all advice could bring value. It's just a question is what could be the best value for the manager we wish to help. However, it's very important to understand that we have our own best ways to learn. If you ask few people what helps them to focus or generate ideas, you will receive totally different answers. We know these answers, just sometimes we need some help to find them. And if we wish the learning phase to be as short as possible, we are responsible to help newly appointed managers to find out their most efficient ways of learning. We are on the way to long-term results, independence, and accountability when we have clear awareness of the following. What type of manager or leader am I? What strength could I use in different situations? What are the strengths of my team? What tools work the best for me and my team? And to wrap up my presentation today, I would like you to offer an opportunity to think over your leadership behavior, going through the leadership triangle offered by Professor Peter Hawkins. You could also use this idea to help managers to choose the priority of their development. 3 corners of the triangle are titled authority, presence, and impact. I invite you to go through all of them step by step right now. Authority which is related to your past, goes first. It is about the skills you have, knowledges you gain, your experience, certificates, diplomas, qualifications, and your role. Everything that you gain till now. It is closely related to your confidence and respect, how you enter the room, and how people greet you. You could take a moment right now to evaluate from 1 to 10 your satisfaction with the authority you have. How satisfied are you with your authority? 1 would mean not satisfied at all, and 10, it is perfect, no need for development. Okay, maybe you have already some mark. Let's look for the second criteria of leadership, which is presence. This is the ability to be fully present and attentive to everything that is going on in the room. It is about the quality of active listening and the ability to hear what is said and what is not, to notice changes in energy and emotions, and to develop relations and make connections among people easily. How are you satisfied with this quality of your leadership? Would it be interesting for you to evaluate it from 1 to 10, the level of your satisfaction, with your present? You could do this right now. And let's make the final step to the quality of leadership. What could bring the power to the most valuable conversation or meeting? I'd like to say the conversation is over, the impact remains. The impact is the third corner of the triangle that is related with the future actions. It is related to creating the shift in commitment and actions to go further, the shift in energy and awareness. It means your presence in leadership increase others people focus on possibilities and the realization of their goals. Review the impact you make on the people you meet. What would be the level of your satisfaction of impact you make for others from 1 to 10? It would mean you are not satisfied at all, and 10 would mean it's perfect, no need to development. What changes would the most important for you? What would bring you the biggest value? Any changes related to your authority, present, or impact? Could you also think about taking the smallest steps in the nearest days to help with situations that you are struggling with? And when we are stuck, we usually need new perspective and help to find ways that work for us. I do wish to bring a new perspective. I do wish you to bring a new perspective to your team and take the biggest value from today's meeting. So thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Gerda, for this triangle, and as well the the abilities, because to cover in such a short time all the tools and methods, it's challenging. So that's why for some it can be heard like a theory, for some practice, and that's what we are including into this iHEAD program. And you see the speakers, they are without slides. My compliments to you, because not hiding behind the slides, because it's much more easier to do so. We are valuing here an open approach and to see people and help from some capacity of theory to bring into the practice with the personal touch, what Miguel is doing, and Gerda, and some other faculty members that we have. And today we also have another faculty member, facilitator Ugnius Savickas, who join us here, and bringing back to you that you are participating from different fields of industries. something was brought to you today. So I would like you to invite to put some questions in the chat or unmute yourself and maybe have some reflection or insight or question that gives you a prompt what you have heard already, and then have the notion to share with us.
I can unmute myself. Hi, everybody. I have a very practical, actually, question from real life. Typically, we have like a structure where some kind of specialists work together. Okay, I'm from IT, so just example. Let's say we have a team of developers with some kind of a development lead, etc. It can be somebody similar to the position. And let's say we are trying to grow the middle management leadership. And if we need to decide to bring somebody up from the team, we usually come with a question what to do with the actual work that they have to do. Sorry, I have a toddler in the background. So like they are afraid usually that they will become redundant as the workers, so that they could just be leaders, and that they will have more of this management responsibilities. So what kind of advice do you have when it comes to growing the structure itself from the specialist, you know, when you don't have like somebody from outside that you could just hire and just drop and say, hey, it's going to be a leader?
So from your situation, could you repeat again the question, how the specialist, you want advice for the specialist who is growing, or?
No, I mean, if we're building the leadership, sometimes we need to bring people who are like specialists in their work and bring them on top the management responsibility, right? The leadership responsibility. And then there comes the question like, if the person wants to do this, how to motivate him, because then he kind of has in his mind that, well, I'm going to be redundant in the team as a specialist if I'm going to move to the management, you know, like how to do this, or maybe it's always better to bring somebody from outside just for the manager position, you know, and just say, hey, this is going to be the new structure.
So how to grow your evolved specialist into the manager position? That's what's your question. Without external.
Yeah.
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 Gerda, you start or do I start? Thank you, Inga, for the question, first of all. Do you want to start, Gerda, or do you want me to?
I could, you know, just share the most important questions that I have in mind. What is important for you? And these questions could be answered by the person who is going to go to the managerial role, why it's important for him. And when he knows the answer, so we could discuss if we invite him or we are looking for another person.
Yeah. So Inga, let me, well, I think it's a great question. Let me give you the following example. Sometimes we have programs for young managers or potential managers or future managers, so people that the company trusts that have the conditions to become managers. So imagine people in the same age cohort, working in the same organization, often with very similar backgrounds. And sometimes we use a very small survey on the motivation to lead. And we ask them all to fill the questionnaire. And the interesting thing is that in the same group, again, of very similar people working in the same organization, the levels of motivation to lead can be quite different, which means that some people are really inclined to accept this challenge, whereas other people think that, you know, this is not for me. And in one case, there was someone, and she was brave enough to say that, you know, I don't want to lead. I told the company I don't want to lead, and I don't even know why I'm here, because I don't want to do this. And I think this is, as Gerda was saying, I think it's okay. Nobody should be forced to lead, because if you feel competent as an expert, then why become the as I mentioned before, the personification of the Peter Principle. So the question is, as Gerda was saying, what do I want to do? Am I okay as a professional expert, or is it appropriate to think about the next challenge? Sometimes I suspect that one reason why people are not inclined or willing to accept these challenges is because they don't feel confident enough to assume the position. And then we have Gerda here. With some coaching, some preparation, the process can be made easier. But I suspect that the combination of motivation and confidence is probably at the origin of your explanation. Some companies, and let me finish with this, some companies have, in some cases, more creative approaches. So imagine that I think that someone is a good candidate for a leadership position, but nobody is sure. The company is not sure, even the person is not sure. In some cases, the company does a kind of an interim leadership period, and at the end, we evaluate if we want to do that. Of course, as you can imagine, the question is, how can we do that without stigmatizing the person if he or she will not move into a leadership position? But I think it's a good combination. Nobody should be forced to be a leader, even or especially if he or she doesn't feel like the position is actually a promotion, but more like a punishment. So, and again, I think it's better to have a good motivated professional than a bad leader, maybe characterized, as Gerda said, with the syndrome, with the imposter syndrome. It's better to avoid that, I suspect. Yeah.
Okay, now just Gil, while we're speaking, yes, I thought about the values of the person. Also, it's very important just to understand what the values this person have. And if we're talking about the value like challenge, if we're talking about the value like growth, yes, we would need to consider this person as the manager, yes. And if we find a person that likes stability or maybe safety or other values, it's not the worst. But maybe this person would be a better specialist. So I don't think that we could give one or another suggestion. Yes, what would be better, to take the person from outside, or to take to look for the person inside the organization. But it's a question about the person and how much we know this person. How well we know this person, yes, and what the picture this person sees himself somewhere in the future, in the vision of organization. So, okay, to speak with person, to understand each other better. This is maybe the most important.
Yeah, that's actually good answer. Thank you all. Why I was asking this one, because for some industries, the lack of resources is quite a big recently. I mean, you cannot just hire in a day somebody, you know, and you cannot train somebody in your team in a day. And if you have like structure that is desperately like growing or booming, let's say, right, some kind of large scales, sometimes you need to make like really unpopular decisions and maybe bring somebody who's definitely like whose destiny is not to be a leader, right? But you just need to put somebody in and kind of grow this person in a way. On top of that, I also wanted to ask you, what do you think about this, like leadership through certificates? This, I would say, probably an issue grew through the last couple of years, especially during the COVID and all these quarantines, when everybody's just sitting at home and just learning something, you know, and like this standard became like, if you have a certificate of like leadership, you have like official paper, you're kind of passing through this. And if you don't, if you've been working at that time and maybe you have all the skills, but you don't have the paper, or you just kind of, I don't know. Yeah. What's your experience maybe? Or what do you see more in this market of coaching leadership?
I'm not sure what certificates do you mention. If we are talking about coaching certificates? Do you mean this?
It can be both, but recently there are like a lot of bigger, smaller like organizations who just I don't know, just copy and paste some kind of written books, and they just do 2 or 3 days of trainings, and you are kind of a certificate, like you finished the leadership exam or something like that. So like, how long should it take normally to grow yourself? And what do you think about all this, like, I don't know, way of learning?
Yeah, so I just thank you for your question. Yes, and I could just share my own experience. So I'm learning as a coach for 7 years by now, and I'm ready to do and continue this in the future because it's constant learning. And also, if we are talking about the leadership, so we should be ready to learn all our lives because the situation is changing. Yes, and we should be ready to solve to look for different solutions. And I don't know. It could be the questions for any organizations. Yes. I see maybe the tendency that HR people and CEOs are more and more interested in the values of their staff. They are more and more interested in any tools, how to make connection, how to communicate, how to know each other better. So from this point of view, the certificate is not the main point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, let me just use this example. The fact that you have a PhD or a graduation in medicine doesn't mean that will be a good researcher or a good doctor. It means that you have the proper training to gain access to the profession. But then I think that Gerda is right. Having access is one thing, to be a good professional is another thing. And I think no certificate can certify that you are going to be a good leader. It only certifies that you got the training. It can be important, of course, but again, it's just the beginning of the journey. And the journey, we do it ourselves.
Yeah. So when we work with the leaders or with the managers of any organization, so usually we work with their vision, we work with their identity. How do I understand myself? What type of manager am I? What are my strengths? What are my values? Because the values, they are not changing. So I guess it is the most important ways. And by now we meet a lot of CEOs that already understand that, or human resources, yes, specialists.
Okay, that was a very good question, actually, talking about leadership through certificates and as well how to give some extra maybe power or maybe authority or maybe impact to the growing specialists into new managers' shoes, actually. So that's why we have combined all these practical and ideas and struggles into this following program that today Gerda and Mikkel and Ugnius, who is here, present. So by the end of the day, I will be asking for those of you who have been in this session to leave your feedback about this webinar. How was your impression, the feeling? Did you get what you came for? And additionally, of course, the program iHEAD will be starting in a couple of weeks, and we have the opening of this program, and that's why we are covering very important areas of decision making on problem solving, as a newly appointed manager's role within the management itself, and as well, most important, about the stakeholders that are around me coming into this position. Because if you are already working with people, if you're already managing a team, it's only the time issue when will be more stakeholders, more people who we will need to find the proper language and to cascade the goals into doable tasks and to get the results. And perhaps today, what we have heard about technical competences, social, strategic, and even self-leadership, at the end of the day, I guess the question stands on really who should care about the struggles of newly appointed manager. And the answer is resources, the right resources that are on place that can help. And during this iHEAD program that you can also find on www.ihead.lt, we are covering through practical practices, as well a very targeted approach through the coaching. That's why we're having Gerda today, which is from the coaching area, and that's why we're having Miguel, powered by Nova School of Business and Economics Executive Education, giving real-life examples how it's solving on a practical side. So perhaps saying that, you know, we have all answers, I can't say that, but with all joint forces, we have ways how to help the person and accelerate the fast track into a new position. And we know, because 25% for the newly appointed managers, it takes around 6 months to go into the shoes of being there. And if you have some more questions, you still can post. We have a couple of more minutes. And to conclude the session that we have had today, thank you for coming, for getting interest into that. I'm looking forward to connect to you because managing this program is very interesting, and to have more talks, I guess not today, but tomorrow. What can it help to you and your company to go and accelerate new people? So I closing this webinar for a moment, and I see some feedback here. Yes, for newly appointed managers, it's a critical side. Yes, for future leadership. Yes, we agree, and we see that more organizations sometimes need to invest in the people, not into the internal training programs, but in external as well. External to meet the other professionals, so they can see on what grounds they meet, what problems they have, and to evaluate themselves how ready and also how fragile they are, because the same applies to the same saying, like team together, everyone achieves more. So with that notion, we have made this program available. So Gerda, Miguel, Ugnius, thank you for joining today this talk. It was a pleasure to have you here, and see you on the program.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good to see you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Ciao.